Hello, my name is Miro, and welcome to another episode of Hoya of the Week, or alternatively, Miro in the Plant Chaos. Yes, I am currently rearranging and doing several plant projects, so it's going to look like this for a moment. Today we have a plant that I like a lot, and I think this is a plant that is liked by many people, if not all in the Hoya community. If you know about it, you most likely like it, and that's because, well, all the features of this plant are lovely. The leaves, the flowers, I find the scent of the flowers also very nice. If I could complain about one thing, and I could because I always can, that would be how short the flowers last. But other than that, I would say this is a pretty wonderful plant. And I told you in the past videos when I covered some Hoya cultivars that this series was really only going to cover species, but because we sort of went out of that and we covered some cultivars, I thought that it would be okay to cover some unnamed plants as well. So I present to you Hoya species UT-033. Now, UT stands for Uthai or UT-033 from Thailand, who also collects Hoyas, and I briefly spoke with Uthai when this plant bloomed for me for the first time because I had some questions about the potential classification into an existing species, which I will cover. And essentially, Uthai told me that he collected this plant in the forests of Indonesia. Now, a lot of the plants that Uthai collected and that carry the UT accession number were collected in Flores Islands. So it is possible that this one was also collected on Flores Islands, but I don't really have the exact location. I do see that across the internet, some people do attach locality Flores Islands to this plant, but my plant did not come with that tag. It was just sold as Hoya species UT-033. And this plant came to me in 2021 through my friend Carolina, but the plant I actually bought from a Swedish Hoya collector, Osa, which I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly now. As I told you, this is a very lovely and almost normally trellised Hoya with very handsome foliage. You can see that my plant is about to bloom again. It's been blooming relatively regularly, I would say, in the past year and a half, and it took me about a year and a half actually to get this plant to bloom for the first time. And I was very excited because a lot of people do say that this plant does take some time to bloom, and that is of course if you receive the plant just as a cutting without peduncles, etc. No cheating. And that is how my plant arrived. And you can see it's in quite a large pot. It is in pawn, and I think I will leave this plant in pawn, though potential for a repot, I don't know, maybe we could switch it out for an organic mix, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to show you how lovely those leaves are if we would allow some focus. Now my plant is grown in my grow tent, and it is in a shelf that is lit by a 24-watt light. The light hits at about here. So I don't know how many centimeters. So that's exactly where the LED bar is, and it's 24 watts. In higher light, this plant will get some coloration, some redness on the leaves. You can actually get quite a nice coloration. So I think that 24 watts is not gonna cut it. My plant has been getting some larger leaves, actually indicating that this is sort of not that high of a light. And to be quite honest with you, I do prefer this deep, dark green foliage. I do have some foliage here that was under higher light, and I just don't like it. It kind of fades. At one point, it was colored, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of sun stressing all of my Hoyas. Most of the leaves are not too big. I'm sure that they can get even bigger in slightly lower light. So it's a good size of the leaf, I would say, but I think what is most impressive is this venation that is sort of a little bit raised. It is a very beautiful glossy leaf. I don't think that you would look at this plant and say that the foliage is ugly. Even in the video now, these dark leaves and the way that light hits them, It almost looks like something out of the Alien movies. Called Sigourney Weaver, right? I find this plant relatively easy to grow. My plant was from day one in pawn, and I heard that some people do struggle with this plant. I know that Doug said that he grows this plant in leca and semi-hydro. And it could be that this plant does like a little bit more moisture. It does, despite the leaves being quite thick, and quite rigid, if you do skip a watering and you go for 10, 11 days, it will become very soft. And I actually do have some softer leaves here towards the bottom, so it definitely needs to be watered, but I don't find it to be that dramatic. I've definitely have seen worse. When it comes to trellising this Hoya, in that aspect, she can be a little bit annoying. I do find that she doesn't really like her vines to be touched all that much, so I kind of let her do her thing. I would like to retrellis her. I think we can get a little bit nicer look. It's looking a bit sparse, and I don't think there is a need for that. And perhaps maybe this would look better on something like an arch trellis, but here we are. And you can see just these beautiful flowers. Now, I really grow this because of the flowers, and the flowers look very similar to Hoya verticillata, which is actually why I reached out to Uthai, is to ask if this is Hoya verticillata. I did take photos of the pollinia with my macro lens, so it's not really with a microscope. And I will attach those if anyone has taken photos of Hoya verticillata pollinia. I've been meaning to do it, but I never do. Unfortunately, I'm not a botanist, so I can't really compare them all that well, but hey, the documentation is out there. Maybe, in the future I can also acquire that scale. But for now, I don't really know much, except that the flower does look a lot like Hoya verticillata, smells like Hoya verticillata, and lasts about as much as Hoya verticillata. So it talks like a duck and walks like a duck. Potentially this could be affinity verticillata or a subspecies of verticillata. I do think that we should name it at this point. Like, what are we doing? Can we just, dedicate some time to very beautiful Hoyas like this one? Because the flower is absolutely gorgeous. It is such a nice, refreshing green. And you would think it doesn't really stand out because of the, green foliage, but it really does. It's just such a beautiful flower to see. And I'm so sad that my plant only has one peduncle. I really hope that Babes is gonna push out another peduncle at one point. But yeah, I just don't think that this plant is something that I will soon see covered with blooms all over, though I really wouldn't mind it. And the smell of the flower, again, as I said, it's very similar to verticillata. And there is some variation in verticillata smells. They go from a grassy smell to a point where they smell like overripe fruit, so it depends. But I find this one to be quite pleasant, and it lasts about 2 or 3 days. That will depend on the temperature. If it's hotter, the flower will last less. If it's not watered, if it's dry, the flower will last less. So really, to extend it as much as you can, I think slightly cooler temps and make sure that it's watered. But in any case, I don't think you're going to get more than 3 days out of these flowers, which is unfortunate because it is a gorgeous one. And it's not really a plant that blooms all the time. You're not going to see this in bloom every month. I think for me, every couple of months, I get this plant in bloom, though I think this one is blooming now again after a month. Now, this plant, as I told you, comes from Indonesia, potentially from Flores Island, and I wouldn't really expose this plant to extremely low temperatures. Now, it's a subtropical climate where it comes from, where I think it comes from, and the temperatures don't really get lower than 65 degrees of Fahrenheit, which is around 18 degrees of Celsius. There is a point, in the mountains where it gets lower to, I think, 55 or 13 degrees of Celsius, but I don't think this would really tolerate that low. Maybe it will. Maybe it will. You can try it and let me know. I certainly don't think that you're going to get an amazing growth at 55 degrees of Fahrenheit and that the plant will thrive. I have found that it really loves my grow tent, and it seems to me that it blooms more when it's warm and humid. And it is warm and humid almost all year round in my tents, but it is slightly warmer in summer So in winter, the temperature does go a little bit lower, maybe a couple of degrees, 3 degrees. We're not talking about a big of a change, and that's Celsius, so probably even more in Fahrenheit. So in winter, my temps will be around 21, 22 of Celsius, and I will just do the conversion. That's around 72 of Fahrenheit. And currently, right now, I would say that they are about 78, 79. I have noticed this plant do much better when it's warmer and, kind of stuffy when you open the tent. It's like warm and really humid. Then it really seems to grow faster. It seems to thrive just a little bit more in those conditions. But I don't think that you will struggle if you manage to keep her warm, if you manage to keep her watered. I have not tried this in organic mix. I don't think that I sold cuttings of this one, maybe one at most. So that I would have sold in organic mix, because just inorganic mixes are not very popular here, but I don't know anyone personally who grows this in organic mix. So if you do, if you flowered it, etc., you can leave a comment down below what mix you use, how frequently you water, what are the conditions, and so on. But for me, inorganic mix seems to work, so I will most likely leave it here. The only, I think, update is the trellis size, and that's going to be a bit tricky because, again, the light is here for this plant, and that means that the shelf level is here. So I don't know where I will exactly put it if I add the trellis. It's going to be challenging, but interesting. I would say this is one of my favorite Hoyas. It always excites me when it's in bloom. I just don't know how you can look at those flowers and not be excited. They are adorable. I would definitely say that this is one of my top 10 favorites of all Hoyas. It's something that I always want to have. And if, when I'm telling you I'm not really sure if I want to repot it from pond, that's because I don't want it to croak. So I wanted to maintain this as much as I can. I don't cut it. I try not to touch it too much. I'm not babying it for sure. I definitely neglect it. But I'm just trying not to, yank out the plant, damage the roots. And you have seen me do that a lot on this channel. But just because how excited I am to see it bloom, yeah, I just don't really want to do anything to it. And you can see from the peduncle here, look at that. It has bloomed many a times. And you can see here that it does make nectar. It is sticky, as all verticillatas. We're not calling it, I didn't call it a verticillata. I didn't say it. Do not go on a Facebook group and say that I said that. I think you're not going to be mistaken if you choose this Hoya. If you don't have it in your collection and you decide to add it, you are going to love it. It's really, really not that big of a struggle. It's just a Hoya that's worth having. I really, really like her. That is all about Hoya UT-033. That is all the information that I have. I wish I could provide a little bit more. The general care for this plant is like with all of my plants. I was talking to Adam recently, and I just said, it's cute to me that you think that my Hoyas get different care if they are in organic or inorganic. So it will get fertilized when I water it. The water will be pH down because I use a mix of RO water and tap water. And tap water is something that is very alkaline. So I bring it down a little bit, add fertilizer, water it, and that's it. Put it in my grow tent and Bob's your uncle. Or whatever the expression is. I don't know really who Bob is. Let me know how you grow this Hoya. Add something in the comments if you have like additional care tips. And if you just like this Hoya as much as I do, I just think, despite me having so many Hoyas that have similar flowers, this one is the keeper. And I really do need to go through my verticillata collection and, pare it down. But this one is definitely going to stay always in my collection. And if by some very huge misfortune I were to lose this plant, I would acquire it right away. But I don't think that's going to happen because, again, she's just big enough now and seems very stable that I think we can just say she's going to stay here forever. Oh, it's just gorgeous. Those leaves, really, really nice. I will see you very soon in the next planty video this Sunday, which I will continue recording after this, and see you in the next Hoya of the week. Bye-bye! You looked so pretty in the video. Really, really nice. I would like to take some time to thank all of my patrons for their incredible support. A massive shout out to my $5 patrons. My 2 anonymous patrons, Alex von Siebenthal, Amber Clear, and Margaret Munt, Angela Bernard, Angela Parrish, and C. Aspen Drake, Betsy, Brett Noble, Candy Taft, Catherine Molina, Christine Claire Cola, Daniela Danube Daniels, Daria Kaminska, Deborah Violet, Deli Heridia, Diane Sikorsky, Dipanjali Rao, Either W, Erin Keenan, Eleni Sagson, Ellen, M. Mortal, Farah, Gathering Moss, Gina Geise, Go Green Tropical, Gross It's Kyle, Heather Uppingham, Hoji Scott, Hoya Heather, Yana Griffin, Jessica Chia, Jonas Barrior, Flarson, Jovan Denoth, Kara, Catherine P, Casey Gross, Callie Gallagher, Kelso, Kimberly Polka, Kiwi Mochi, Christy Ehrlich, Lisa Mary, MPLS, Lori J. Revert, Mandy Milliken, Marcel Har, Maria Stein, Marina Yarmolich, Mars B, Marty Miller, Mary Rose, Melissa Walker, Michael Curley, Michelle Heron, Nicole Ferranti, Mirka Grun Roos, Moa Edmond, Nelly Yang, Niha Basso, Nicole Maroney, Nanguin, Nita Macy, BJ Planet Druid, Rachel Peterson, Sandra Cornelius, Sherry Kumar, Sophia Rian, Stephanie H2O, Tessa Martins, Tia BTJWO, Trista Bailey, Tristan Thomas, Wendy Rossman, Zenia Green, Youth of the Volumut, Zaira Rivera, Zordarama, and Zlakov Niponi. A big thank you to my $3 patrons: Angelina Farnan, Kilone Constance, Daryl De Rosario, Eden C, Catherine Parsons, Kent Brown, Elle Lindberg, Lindsay Ann, Mary H, Monica Wykers, Nella, Syke Zera, Renee Church, Ringlov Tang, Watanas Riakul, and Wendy Foreman. And a thank you to my $1 patrons: 1 anonymous patron, Alice Borrelin, Brandon Pacheco, Christina Greengrass, Colleen Coyle Levi, Couture Helvetica, Emilia Bronson, Jamie Arsenault, Jolie Sullivan, Kayla Vavra, Kelly Ash, Chris Perez, Lauren M, Lori N Subramanian, Usman Fernandez, Neely Spicer, Nerdy Kathy, Olivia Chinmuller, Sarah, and Tracy the Eibler.